All right, welcome back. No Quarter Given podcast. I'm Jason Peter. We're here in Tampa. We're giving you a full training camp breakdown. We've just gone over the offense and special teams. We're going to go over defense, and then we're also going to talk about the coaching. We got a new coach we got to talk about to see
Yeah.
if he's up for the task for his second go around. Let's get to the coaching right now, Peter Blake.
Okay.
Your thoughts on what was your thoughts, Todd Bowles versus Byron Leftwich in the offseason when there was rumblings about Bruce Arians retiring? Did they go the way you would have liked them to go? There was obviously Leftwich was in the mix with the Jaguars. Bowles was in the mix with the Vikings. How do you think the Bucs handled that coaching search?
I mean, for me, I thought it was going to be Byron Leftwich because he's an offensive coach, and that's what you see around the National Football League. But with that being said, with the way Todd Bowles has made this defense, remade the defense, the statistics support that, how they've improved overnight. I don't hold that record against him with the New York Jets. The Jets stink. Just in the season, I'm willing to give him a chance. I was
Yeah.
going to go with Byron Leftwich because he's an offensive coach. Again, that's what the NFL has done. You don't want to lose him, of course. But at the end of the day, Todd Bowles seems like the most sensible choice. And I like his energy. And I think because he is a defensive minded coach, that they may scale back the offense just a little bit and try to run the ball and have that mentality of being more balanced, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I mean, one thing I want to see Todd do, game management. One
Mm,
thing that makes me a little nervous is I don't know if I love him. I mean, I know he's going to do it, but him calling the defense, every defensive play, that takes away some of your focus from the game management part of things. Do you go for it on fourth down? Do you run a trick play? Do you do the things that a head coach has got to make decisions on? Do you challenge something? When do you use your timeout? Those kind of things. That's the only thing that makes me a little nervous. Again, he's overly qualified to do it. And again, I want to see him get better at that in his second go around as a head coach.
no, absolutely. And, you can't go wrong with Tom Brady and the team that is around him. And of course, this defense made in his image, if you will. So they're going to have co-defensive coordinators. Of course, he's going to have a say in it. And you're exactly right. We've seen, coordinators before in the past fail because, it may be easy to be a coordinator and be able to run a defense, but it's a whole different animal when you're a head coach and you have to do this and do that and things that you didn't have to worry about. So that is going to be interesting to see throughout the season and what the drop off is, or possibly the Bucs could actually be better with Todd Bowles, as crazy as that sounds.
And the other part of this is he has to handle the media. How do you manage the Tom Brady if Tom Brady's gone another week, handling that kind of stuff, whether it's injuries, whether it's locker room strife. There could be, egos, personalities. The Bucs have a lot of star players on offense. Is Julio Jones going to be satisfied with getting 2 targets? Those kind of things that come up that we don't, a lot of times we as fans and the media don't hear about a whole lot, that he's got to manage those things on the interior inside of that locker room.
Yeah, that's why I found it comical that everybody was like, BA, good thing he's gone. He's over the hill. That coach was tremendous. He gave this offense, this team, their personality, and for him to handle all those personalities. And I think coaches don't necessarily get as much credit as they deserve. You look
Yep.
back in the annals of time with the Phil Jackson, people say, well, he had Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, but he had to, collectively manage those personalities. You had Kobe Bryant in check, but you have to manage those. So you have to be really good or really great at your job in order to do that. I don't think BA got enough credit. And again, we're going to see what Todd Bowles and the rest of this coaching staff can do this year because all the pressure is there. It most likely is Tom Brady's last year. And he's going to have a lot of personalities to manage, namely Mr. Brady himself.
And remember, Bruce Arians is still involved. He's in the helping the front office. And here's the other sneaky part of that being the head coach. You, along with the GM, along with Bruce Arians, have to make some of these tough roster decisions at the bottom of the roster. Do you keep Scotty Miller versus Jerry Stearns? Do you keep Suckup versus Borgalis? Do you make a move? Do you keep Ryan Griffin? Those are tricky little roster moves that you got to manage. And it's not all Jason Light. It's going to be input from Todd Bowles. Maybe he didn't have as much input last year at the DC. He's going to be the main input guy along with Bruce Arians and Jason Light.
Yeah, and I trust in the organization. I trust in Light, and I trust in going forward that they know what they're doing. But it's a wrinkle that wasn't there last year and now is there. So
All right, let's get to the defensive line.
Yes.
Akeem Hicks gonna make it. Vita Vea gonna make it. Golston gonna make it. Logan Hall gonna make it. Raheem Nunez Roaches probably gonna make it, most likely. Joe Tryon Shoyinka gonna make it. So that's 6 right there. Patrick O'Connor probably gonna make it. He's been a solid backup. A very sneaky move the Bucs made yesterday brought back Carl Nassib. He had a very good year in 2019 under Todd Bowles at defensive end. Shaq Barrett's also, it's part of that defense. I like the Nassib pickup. The only reason Nassib left before was because of the contract. The Bucs weren't going to pay him that much money. You're getting Nassib at a cheap contract. He can be a perfect role player. Anthony Nelson's going to be another guy who they're going to lean on. So that's 6, 7 guys. They typically keep 8 defensive linemen active most weeks. So that's 7 out of 8. The question of the day is Cam Gill got hurt. That was a guy they really liked. He's got a Liz Frank injury. Those don't heal in a week or two. That's usually a prolonged recovery time. What are your thoughts about the D-line?
Yeah, you had to sign Nassib in the first place because, like you said, it was disappointing because Gill was starting to show some flashes of brilliance, all right? He had a sack in the Super Bowl versus Patrick Mahomes. He showed something on Saturday night, and then all of a sudden he gets hurt. So you had a need there. Is there a possibility that if you have another injury, knock on wood, that you could go out and get a JPP or you go out and get a D Ford or somebody like that?
Yeah,
certainly. And that's the reason why your point is very astute on the last segment with the offenses, where you could get rid of a wide receiver like a Tyler Johnson or a Scotty Miller to save that extra $1 or $2 million. So you can help that defensive line out, because at the end of the day, there's 2 things you need in the National Football League to win. You need a quarterback and you need somebody who can get after the quarterback. And if you have to start dealing with depth issues, then you're going to have to supplement that in some way.
Yep.
And that's how you do it. So I'm wondering what they do at that point. Hopefully they don't have another injury. And Anthony Nelson, he's going to be counted on a lot.
Yes.
In the same mold as Nassib, if you will. Same type of guy.
Rotational guy. Yep.
Very deceptive. Not necessarily fast or athletic, but quick twitch.
Tall. He's tall. 6'6". What I like about Nelson is he's gotten better every year. He's not going to ever be a superstar, but he's gotten incrementally better every year. He's a great rotational guy. Same with a guy like Patrick O'Connor. Golston's another great rotational guy. Never going to be a star, but you got to have those gutty, gritty guys on the defensive line that can hold their own and not get killed in the run game.
I've heard of another guy, Elijah Ponder. That's the name that I talked to a pass rushing coach who's worked with him. He's cut down weight. That may be a player that you least expect makes the line because you have injuries and because he shows out. That's the reason why preseason is so important. It's not for the guys you already know are going to make this team,
right?
It's the guys that you necessarily don't, and that's the great thing with this shortened preseason with 3 games. You get a chance to evaluate those guys.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to the linebackers. We talked about Shaq Barrett, more defensive line, but he's technically considered a linebacker. We know Shaq Barrett's good, Nelson's good. Let's talk about the inside linebacker positions. Devin White, Levante David are locks. Obviously, KJ Britt's probably going to make it. The decisions probably have to come down to what Grant Stewart. You got JJ Russell. You got Fudukasi. Which of those guys can be special teams demons for you? Potentially could play as a backup linebacker if you had an injury problem. Which of those guys do you like?
I like Grant Stewart because the guy is a special teams demon. He's played well. I think he makes this team if he continues to put that effort out there. Of course, you talk about, how do you pronounce his name again?
Olakunle Fadukasi, I think.
Bless you.
I think.
He was impressive on Saturday night.
Yeah.
So he keeps on having those type of performances, then those are the type of tough decisions that you're going to have to make.
Practice squad, probably a guy like him.
Right.
That you can keep on the practice squad unless he just completely blows up in the preseason. Then you got a decision to make. But KJ Britt, they like. He was a draft pick a couple years ago. Stewart was a late round draft pick. Again, JJ Russell's in the mix. Your guy Elijah Ponder. So again, this is another spot of the roster where you could see a guy come out of nowhere and make it, kind of deal.
And that's the weird thing about it. I thought Ponder was a defensive lineman. And he actually started out, I believe, as a defensive tackle, but he got his body in shape to now he's a linebacker.
Yep.
So maybe he makes the team because of the versatility, right? He can play defensive line. He can also play linebacker. But I like Grant Stewart in this point.
There you go.
Yeah.
Again, we as fans obviously hope that not Shaq, but Levante and Devin, we don't need backups. Hopefully they're playing 90% of the plays.
Yes.
But obviously Levante's getting a little older. He had an injury issue last year. Those tend to pop up when you're 32, 33, and you've taken as much wear and tear as he has over the years.
Would we all agree, even with the Levante David at 60%, that's not necessarily a good thing for Devin White because his game kind of took a step back. So
right.
You need each other. You need Devin White to play better than he did last year, whether David is healthy or not. But
correct.
For his game, he's got to work on that. But yes, you've got to have both of those linebackers on this roster. You can't have any injuries because that definitely weakens your defense.
And I heard an interview with Devin White early in the preseason. He really is focusing on his zone coverage. We know how athletic he is. He gets in trouble when he overruns plays, when he tries to read too much into it. Right. Play your zone. If we're playing a zone defense, play your zone. Don't try to do Levante's job. Don't try to be the hero in the room to intercept that ball. Do your job. We know you can cover guys man to man, but zone defensively is where he struggled that we need him to, again, and he understands that too. I'll give him credit. He understood, hey, I need to be better in zone coverage schemes.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to play a lot better. You got to do your job. It goes back to what Tony Dungy. It goes back to the New England Patriots. Do your job. You do your job. Stop trying to do everybody else's job. Yep. If you do your job, everybody else gets better. And once again, White has to be one of those players this year that steps up, that makes that defense return to prominence, in my opinion.
Because guess what? He's in year 4. He's going to want to get paid at the end of this year. And they're going to pay him. He's going to get paid unless he falls off the cliff. He's going to get paid, but like you said, do your job. Be an all-pro. We need Devin White to be a Pro Bowl linebacker. Not good. We need Devin White to be a Pro Bowl kind of player.
You need to have him be the player that was in the Saints game where he basically took over, not only with his tackling ability, but his athleticism, where he's jumping plays, where he has interceptions, where he is making a difference. Look, you want to be $100 million linebacker, which was the rumor coming out when he was drafted out of LSU. That's the way to go. You can make that decision very easy for this Bucs organization if you become elite, and that's the next step in Devin White's progression.
I agree. Let's go to the secondary. Let's start at safety first before we get to the corners. You got Winfield, you got Mike Edwards, you got Logan Ryan, you have Keanu Neal, who's now injured, so that's not a good sign, hurt. You got Chris Cooper, you got Nolan Turner, Troy Warner, and you also have Ross Cockrell. You're probably going to keep 4 safeties on the active roster. Winfield.
Ross Cockrell anymore. They cut him.
Oh, my bad. Okay. That's why he's not on my depth chart.
No. Hey, listen, this is the reason why we do this. And I think to a man, that was kind of surprising, right? Ross Cockrell off this team. And of course they had to make some room for Nassib. So now does this make this situation a little bit easier because you're done with Ross Cockrell? And now
he might be back now that Keanu Neal's injured. He might be coming back.
Well, that was the big thing about Neal. He can never stay healthy. Jason Powers,
right?
First round pick, all the potential in the world, can never stay healthy.
Yep.
And here we are again, and I get it. The injury bug has hit the Bucs here early. A good thing it's early, not during the season, of course, middle of the season or the postseason like it did last year. Yeah, that's kind of disappointing. You can't control it, but it makes decisions a little bit harder, I guess.
And this is another spot where I could see the Buccaneers after the cut down that they could find a veteran safety that's played elsewhere who maybe has some experience with Bowles, maybe with the a Jets kind of guy. You never know who gets released from a salary cap perspective, where they could bring him another guy in as the 4th safety, because I think they love Logan Ryan. I think he's going to be a fantastic safety for the Buccaneers. He can play the slot if he needs to. He can play some corner. I think personally Ryan and Winfield would be the best safeties. I'm not the biggest Mike Edwards fan, but I know he's listed as the starter currently. I'd love to see Logan Ryan and Winfield start opening day.
And I thought it was going to be Winfield and Neal as your starting safeties. You play Logan Ryan as a slot, or you have all three safeties on the field at the same time. Don't be surprised if that happens. But once again, if Neal can't stay healthy, then you got to go to Mike Edwards. And he didn't play particularly well last year. That's the reason why you're going out in free agency and addressing it and getting a Logan Ryan and a Keanu Neal in the first place.
I mean, Neal, from everything, from what I heard, he's out at least through the preseason. So that's not a good sign. So again, would it shock me if they cut Keanu Neal? No, it wouldn't shock me. Again, I don't know depending on what his injury is. It wouldn't shock me though if they were able to upgrade that after the cut downs by another safety around the league somewhere that gets released. So that's a spot to be on the lookout for.
It's a good point. You hope that he plays against his former team and the Dallas Cowboys, who tried to switch him out to linebacker, which didn't necessarily work out. So,
all right. Yep. No, you're right. It'd be interesting. So, all right, let's get to the corners. Again, to me, this is the corner could be the spot on the defense that if these guys play well, we're a championship roster.
Gotta stay healthy. I mean,
yeah,
what it comes down to. Last year, you didn't play a game for the majority of the season. Most of your depth, you're depending on, Richard Sherman.
Right.
What was the kid's name from the Colts?
Desir.
Yeah, Pierre Desir. I mean, that's not players you want to depend on at that moment. So you're exactly right. We
got Murphy Bunning, we got Carlton Davis who re-signed. He's obviously a lock. Jamel Dean. So Murphy Bunning and Jamel Dean last year of their contract. So again, they're playing for their supper, so to speak, contract year. So you expect to get, again, fourth year in the defense. You expect this to be if they're ever going to peak, this is the time to do it. Those three guys are solid. You got obviously Logan Ryan who can play some corner. They draft a kid, Zion McCollum, who they love in the 5th round. Long, can run. He may not be ready for prime time to be a contributor immediately, but they really like this Zion McCollum.
Yeah, they really like him, and I think that's the reason why you cut a Ross Cockrell, because you draft him, you see potential, although he had some rough moments the other night, and that's life in the NFL as a cornerback. You got to forget very quickly, but I also believe he's banged up with a hamstring injury. So
yeah, and you got a guy who played a little bit last year, showed some signs. D. Delaney, if he makes it, he'll probably be the 5th corner kind of guy, where he special teamer, emergency corner kind of guy, but he knows the system. He's been around. He showed some moments. He made some plays last year, so I think Delaney probably will make it. If not the practice squad, I would be pretty confident D. Delaney makes it one way or the other.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
All right. Any other pivot points on the roster that you think, again, give me a guy who's the one guy on defense that's irreplaceable, meaning if he gets hurt, we're in trouble.
Vita Vea, and I don't think he's going to play in this preseason, but he's such a big time cog to this defensive line.
Yep.
Moved on from Ndamukong Suh. There's a reason why you did that, because Vita Vea he is the present. And then you also add Akeem Hicks. So losing a Vita Vea is definitely a major loss. We talked about Levante David and his importance. I would have to say also JTS, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, because you're already down with Cam Gill. You signed Nassib. I get it. He knows your defense, but you can't afford to lose pass rushers.
I'm gonna say Shaq Barrett, because he's the guy that draws the attention by the offensive line.
Okay.
The attention of Vita Vea and Shaq Barrett is what's going to allow Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to get the one-on-one opportunities. Hakeem Hicks, the one-on-one opportunities, because Barrett and Vita are getting doubled most of the time, and you can't double them all.
No, you can't. And especially with those two big guys in the middle, it's supposed to free up those outside players. And you like to see more out of Shaq Barrett, right? He needs to take that next step. I think maybe he does that. I don't know if he repeats what he did 3 years ago, of course.
We need 12 to 15 sacks. Seriously. You don't need 20. We're not looking for 20. That's an all-time career. We're looking for solid 12 to 15 sacks, consistent pressure. Again, allow Shoyinka to get one-on-one coverage. That way we'll see what he's about. And that also opens up the blitz lanes for Devin White and Levante to blitz.
And also you need to see JTS more, not only as a pass rusher, but also play the run, because we heard about that in the offseason. Can he take his game to the next level, because you moved on from JPP and there's a reason. You want to see what this kid can do. He's a first round pick last year. So it's time to do it, kid.
And again, another guy that I think is going to be a sneaky good acquisition here. I think Nassib has shown the ability to rush the passer. In 19, he and Shaq Barrett were pretty damn good coming off the edge together.
Sure they were.
I think if Nassib still has it in the tank, again, he's 3 years older, I get it. But if he still has it, I think he could be a sneaky guy that could be some rotational pressure for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely correct about that. And then again, you mentioned Anthony Nelson. What's Anthony Nelson going to do this year? 4th round pick,
right?
Again, in the Nassib mold, can he take the next step?
Right.
So some questions here. Very interesting storylines with this Bucs team. It's not all about offense; it's about defense. And this defense, once again, needs to return to what they were in that Super Bowl year, in my opinion.
And one more question, and one thing I forgot to mention on the offense, we need to talk about this. Sure. The center position. Are you convinced Hainsey can be the guy, or do you think they potentially go out and maybe bring in a JC Treader, a guy like that? Or do you think they're sold on either Leverett or Hainsey at center?
I'm not sure. It depends on how he plays in the preseason. We've heard, again, mixed bag in practice, everything else. Don't be surprised if, once again, they do have some money saved up, that if they don't, maybe kick the tires on a Treader or somebody in that same conversation. Just because it's Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady is still on this team. He may be missing on vacation wherever he is. He still has an influence. And if he feels like he's not the one and they don't have it on this roster, don't be surprised.
And the Bucs have not been afraid to make trades either. So don't be surprised if they were to trade for somebody here in the next week or so that's on another roster for a pick next year, or for another, or for we have an abundance of wide receivers. Maybe the Bucs package one of the wide receivers and a lineman for another lineman from another team. Something like that wouldn't shock me as well coming out of the Bucs front office.
Well, look at what's happening with the Cleveland Browns right now. They're down to like their 3rd string center because both of their centers are out for the year. So they're in big trouble. That may be a team.
Yep.
By the way, JC Treader was their center
at
some point. So you would think that maybe they give him a call. Maybe they don't. But, boy, you just don't want to get into that situation, right? You don't want to depend on 2nd and 3rd string guys. I know you draft that way with depth, but if you got to do that for a long period of time, there could be some big time trouble. Absolutely.
Again, I think Shaq Mason will be fine at guard. I think Stinney will do a good job. I think Stinney's shown some consistency.
Is he the left guard?
What?
Is he the left guard in your opinion?
I think so. Yeah, I think he's the left guard.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Stinney and Shaq are your guards. Hainsey's probably getting the first shot at center.
I hear Leverett. That's the guy.
It may be, and I may be wrong. But that's a good
on the Sports Web a long time ago.
I gotcha.
Yeah, not bad.
All right, promote yourself while we're at this pivot point in the podcast.
Yeah, it's the evolution of Sports Talk Television on Monday and Wednesday nights on Amped Up Sports, The Hub, and I Love St. Pete. It's the Sports Web. I'm your host, Peter Blake. We say 3 things on that show. Bring your passion. Bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense.
And Peter and I are working on some on a venue potentially for our pregame and postgame Bucs coverage for before week 1 starts and all that. Remember, we were at Duckies last year, so we're working on a location. Maybe Duckies again, we'll see, but we're working on some options about potentially hosting some more pre and post game stuff. So we will let you know. Check us out on social media. I'm at JPost Sports at Twitter. Peter, what's your Twitter handle?
I think it's P Blake 1003 at the sport.
Find us on YouTube. Go to our YouTube. Find us on YouTube, the YouTube channels. Find the Sports Web. It's all over the place. Peter's a rock star.
YouTube, Peter H. Blake on Facebook. Go to Amped Up Sports. Go to I Love St. Pete, the Hub. Plenty of places to see not only your work, but my work.
All right, so we're going to wrap up the podcast. We're going to talk about some Buccaneers of previous generations that have come out of nowhere to make the team, late round draft picks that have turned out to be really, really good players in the NFL for both the Bucs and other teams, Super Bowl champions, major contributors. So I'm gonna let you start with the first name. You name us a couple guys that we've dug up over the Bucs history that have had great careers as late round undrafted players.
All right, let's go with LeGarrette Blount, 2010.
Yeah.
Undrafted at the time, so much hype, of course. That was kind of nullified, if you will, when he punched the player from Boise State. So he went undrafted, made the team, of course, had a tremendous career. Even the first year for the Bucs, I believe he rushed for over 1,000 yards. I mean, he had some good, unbelievable highlights, good runs there against Green Bay. I remember one game in particular, Arizona, doing the hurdle. He's done that in the past. So that was one of the players I thought about. How about Michael?
Real quick on Blount.
Yeah.
He was cut by the Titans initially, then the Bucs picked him up in training camp. So, good job of scouting by the personnel department. He's got 6 degrees of separation from Tom Brady. He played on a couple of Brady's Super Bowl championship teams in New England towards the later, and he was a major contributor. I think he had 4 touchdowns in a playoff game one time for the Patriots, one of their Super Bowl years.
I think you're right about that. What he was known for being with the Bucs and Greg Schiano, of course, the Schiano regime getting rid of him. He couldn't answer the alarm clock, so they eventually cut him.
Yes.
And of course, he went on to do better things, great things with
Pittsburgh,
the Patriots.
New England. Yep. Next. Next.
Michael Bennett, 2009. Here's a player at the time, and I remember a guy by the name of Steve White, who used to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I used to be in radio at 10:10 a.m. He used to absolutely tell me beyond a shadow of a doubt that Michael Bennett at that point was the best pass rusher on this team. Of course, he showed out and then eventually went on to better things after he left the Bucs. The Bucs and Mark Dominic should have never let him go. But the story was
didn't pay him.
Well, they didn't want to pay him, but also he had a shoulder injury. It didn't seem like it affected him with the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, right.
Or the Bears or any other teams he played for.
He was a part of that Legion of Boom in Seattle.
Yes.
During that run.
Yes, and just imagine all those years the Bucs searching for a pass rusher. They had one, couldn't pay him. That guy comes to mind.
All right, I'm going to give you a couple names. A couple kickers from back in my day. Michael Husted, 1993.
Whoa.
Played a long time in the NFL. Had a lot of game-winning moments with the Buccaneers. Played for a couple other teams. Husted was a guy that played a while. Steve Christie. Remember Steve Christie, 1990.
Well, wasn't he before Michael Husted?
Yes.
And then they went out and signed the Dallas kicker, and that didn't necessarily work out, so they went with Husted, correct?
Chris Boniol was the Dallas kicker, who's now the kicking coach for the Buccaneers. Okay, Chris Boniol, in all seriousness. Christie was a kicker out of William and Mary, made the team as a rookie in 1990, first team All-Pro in 1990, only stayed with the Buccaneers 2 years. Bucs don't sign him, let him go to Buffalo. He's part of that championship run with the Bills in the mid-90s to all those Super Bowls. He was also a first-round draft pick in the Canadian Football League. First-round pick as a kicker.
And was he not also a part of that, one of the greatest comebacks of all time, where the Bills win what?
Yes.
The 38.
Yes, kick the game winner. Kick the game winner.
And the Houston, kickers all around the place that the Bucs got rid of, making winning kicks for other teams.
I'm gonna give you another one.
Yes.
Shelton Quarles, 1997.
Whoa. Okay.
He was undrafted. Again, glue kind of guy. Great glue player, teamed up with all those guys in the 90s, Brooks, Sapp, and all those guys. Works for the organization now. He was a guy that came out of nowhere. Nobody knew who this guy was and had a tremendous NFL career.
All right, I got one for you. How about Carl the Truth Williams, 1996, out of Texas A&M Kingsville?
Yes.
Is that what it was?
Yes.
Became not only a productive wide receiver in the Tony Dungy era, but also a special teams
kick returner,
kick return, punt return.
Yes, he was a fan favorite back in the day. Yeah. The Truth.
I love it.
Who came up with the nickname? Who gave him the Truth, the nickname?
I thought it was the Tooth at the time.
No, the Truth.
Somebody said it was the Tooth, and then they said it was the Truth. Donald Penn.
Yep.
2006. I mean, good offensive lineman that came
Did
out of nowhere, right? Played some years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Raiders.
Yeah, yeah.
He played. He had a great career. I mean, left tackle too at a premium position. It was undrafted free agent out of Gruden. Gruden brought on board. Gruden found him. Left tackle, played 10 years at least in the league. Very good career. So that's another guy. Two more guys, and we'll wrap it up. Back in the day, 1979, the glory days. 12th round draft pick, David Logan, nose tackle.
Oh my God. Because you remember talking about all these Bucs players, especially 96, the Bucs weren't on TV. So you had Gene Deckerhoff, you had David Logan, and that's where you knew him from. And then you always heard the stories from the 70s, of course, him taking back a touchdown and how athletic he was and gifted he was. So
He
12
scored a
rounds,
touch. He scored a touchdown. I believe it was either 80 or 81 against the Detroit Lions that clinched the division. It was
yes.
either a fumble return or an interception. He scampered about 40 yards for a touchdown, which turned out to be the clincher for the Bucs to win the division in the old Silverdome.
Gotta love it.
And he was a local sports guy here in Tampa for many years as a sportscaster. He tragically died of a heart attack in his early 50s. So I mean, he's been passed away for several years, but I mean, just a great guy, great community guy, great professional, and a great media guy.
Amazing color commentator.
Yeah.
Because look, kids, it's not so easy to do this broadcasting thing. And when you're on the radio and you're in a blackout situation and the Bucs are not good, he made it exciting to listen to that game. I not only listened for Gene Deckerhoff, I listened for David Logan.
No, you're right. He did a really good job. Really good job.
Stuff. Remember him and Jesse the Body Ventura?
Yes.
Remember that?
I remember very well.
Yes.
Jesse and people. This was when Jesse was still in his heyday of his wrestling stuff.
Right.
He did a pretty good job with the Buccaneers.
He did.
On the radio call. He wasn't just a schlub in the booth. He did a good job with the call, working with Gene, and Fran Kersey back in the day. I mean, he did a good job. I mean, I was impressed with Jesse the Body. He then went on to become governor, of Minnesota. I mean, so Jesse had a great post wrestling career.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't understand why the XFL didn't pick up on him right away. I mean, was he involved with the XFL?
Yeah, he was.
He was. Okay. Well,
for a little bit. I mean, for a brief, the brief time. Yeah, absolutely.
But couldn't duplicate that success. I just remember that. I believe it was 1990, and it was Gene. It was Jesse.
Fran Kersey.
I thought it was Al Keck.
No, I don't think. Keck might have been. Jesse worked 2 years, I think. 1 year might have been Keck, and I thought 1 year was Fran Kersey. But I may be. Guess who would know that? Our buddy Paul Stewart would know that.
That's why you got to go to buckpower.com.
Exactly.
To look that kind of stuff up. I mean,
exactly.
We think we know. And was it Chris Bonio or was it a guy by the name of Willis?
You're right. You might be right there too. Might have been Ken Willis. Ken Willis might have been the guy for the Cowboys. But yes,
I'm completely ridiculous with
that's quality. That's a quality knowledge right there, and that's why Buck Power has every roster, every year, every draft pick. Audio. I guarantee he has audio of Jesse the Body calling some clip back in the day. So buckpower.com, your place for all things Buck history.
And look, Paul, that season wasn't great, but if you have those radio calls from that year, even though they lost a lot of those games, they were absolutely entertaining. I mean, I'm falling asleep in my father's car listening to these games. Jesse, because it was bad, but early on, it was just very entertaining.
It was great.
Very entertaining. And then David Logan, just always I just remember the Bucs coming up with Tony Dungy and him saying, this crowd, this is like the Temple of Doom, and this defense. And when you get a defensive guy that gets passionate about it, I mean, you can hear it in his voice. He takes you there. That's what you got to do as a broadcaster. You can't be all cookie cutter and all this other stuff. You got to take somebody there. And I remember just being a kid feeling like I was at the stadium, and I don't feel like that anymore because you're watching TV and you watch the broadcast and like that. At that point, that's all you had. So you got taken there. And I felt like I was there at Tampa Stadium. most of the time because Raymond James Stadium wasn't around by then.
And Logan was an underrated player. He had a 7 or 8 really good year career with the Bucs. He was there in '79 when they went to the title game. Obviously, he was there during the early '80s with Doug Williams when they won the division a couple times. So I mean, he was a valuable player on that defense back in the early '80s. And again, great guy off the field as well. Peter, we've used up a lot of time, which is great for the Buck fans. We appreciate you guys. Remember, find us at No Quarter Given. Our podcast will be linked at buckpower.com as well as your podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Google. Find us, subscribe, rate, and review. We love to hear you. Tell other Buck fans about this podcast. We're here for you guys. We're trying to provide you data, reviews, analysis for the previous games, this week's game. Paul Stewart's going to have, again, a historical tribute to every opponent every week kind of deal. So he's going to give you a great 5 or 6 minutes of audio clips, analysis, and all that stuff. So this is your place for Bucs coverage. We'll be here previewing the Week 1 Dallas Cowboy game here in a couple of weeks. But again, for Peter Blake, tell us you going to be in depth watching these games the next 2 weeks?
Oh, you know I will. I'll be watching them, and we'll be coming on this podcast and coming on other shows and talking about it with my tag team partner of the world here, Mr. Jason Powers.
All right, I got to make one request as we go into 2022 now.
Yes.
We got to retire the Ukrainian music, the intro music. We got to retire the Ukraine national anthem on my intro. We got to find a new intro.
Why is that funny to me? Why every time you come on, I feel like Ivan Drago is going to come out. And
the Nikolai Volkov intro music from WWF circa 1984.
Nice.
Oh, God. All right, Buck fans, we'll see you in a couple weeks. No Quarter Given podcast. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the No Quarter Given podcast.